I've always been a quiet person by nature, raised by parents who taught me to be kind to others. As a result, I rarely got angry with people and sometimes even put myself at a disadvantage. Nevertheless, I lived by the principle of doing things for the sake of others. My friends would sometimes scold me, saying you should express your emotions more, but I loved seeing people smile and always prioritized others over myself. After graduating from college, I joined a reasonably large advertising agency. Although I was introverted, I thought a sales position might make me more outgoing. I was genuinely interested in sales, so I asked to be assigned to the sales department. For the first 2 to 3 years, I was stationed at a branch office, a little distance from the headquarters. My boss at the time, the branch manager named James, was very caring. He didn't get angry at subordinates' mistakes. Instead, he emphasized learning from them. Whenever I made a mistake, he would help me think it through and encourage me, making my job feel fulfilling. James was greatly respected not just by the staff but also by the CEO and clients. Under his leadership, I believe the company's sales were quite good. However, in my second year, James was transferred to the headquarters and George took over as my new boss. George was from the headquarters, and frankly, I had never heard anything positive about him. He was known for being lazy, kind only to young women, and arrogant towards married employees, those with children, and younger male staff. Many had left because of him. He was always obsequious to the CEO and those who benefited him. Rumors were that, despite his incompetence, he was good at ingratiating himself. When it was announced that such an infamous person like George would come to our branch, some female staff members even said I'd quit if he came. Faced with his imminent arrival, I was filled with anxiety about what lay ahead. As usual, I arrived at work 15 minutes before the start of my shift. Since joining the company, I had made it a routine to clean the office in the morning. That day, as I opened the door to start cleaning, I was surprised to find someone already there. Nevertheless, I greeted them with a good morning. In response, a loud voice said, "Good morning. Who are you?" I'm Ethan. I stammered. "I'm George from the headquarters. Nice to meet you. Are you always the first one here?" "Yes. Since I joined, I've always come in early to clean before everyone else." I see," George said and then started walking around the room. I continued cleaning without much concern. Soon, other employees began arriving, each greeting George, until it was time for our first meeting of the day. George opened the meeting by saying, "I'm George from the headquarters. Let's make sure sales don't drop under my watch. I'll be strict with employees whose sales are poor." Hearing this, I felt a jolt of anxiety. Despite being in my second year, my performance was so poor that even new employees were outperforming me. I wonder if I'm not suited for sales, I thought, feeling troubled by George's words. Then George ordered, "Those whose names I call, come to the front." As expected, my name was among them. For the next 30 minutes, he lectured each of us standing at the front. When it was my turn, George pointed at the sales performance board and said, "I see you clean every morning. It would be great if that made you good at your job. Before cleaning, why don't you think about how to improve your sales?" He said in a mocking tone. All I could muster was a quiet yes in response. As I thought about whether I could handle such a situation, I tried to shift my focus and went to write down my day's fieldwork schedule. George then commented loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, your sales aren't great, but you're diligent about your fieldwork. Impressive." Feeling embarrassed, I answered in a small voice, "I'm heading out," and left the room. Passing by the break room, I overheard colleagues, Sophia and Lily, talking while preparing tea. I heard George always find someone to bully. I bet he's already picked someone from the group he called out earlier. Yeah, like Ethan maybe. He's quite shy. Hearing this, I was rooted to the spot, unable to move. What if it's really me? I'm the only one in my second year among those he called out today. These thoughts raced through my mind, leaving me frozen in place. Then Sophia, coming out of the break room, noticed me. "Oh, Ethan, were you here? Sorry, did you overhear us?" she asked, looking flustered. "No, it's okay. It's true my performance isn't great, but we see how hard you're working, Ethan. Customers even say, Ethan is a thoughtful and good salesman. So, keep it up. We're all supporting you," Lily said, offering me a piece of candy. Seeing them leave, I thought to myself, even if I become George's new target, it shouldn't matter if I improve my performance. Everyone has their highs and lows. I won't let this get me down. I'll make great proposals for my clients. With renewed determination, I headed out for my sales appointments. After that, I worked tirelessly to improve my performance. My sales gradually improved, but they were still far behind my peers. George would scold me daily and even blame me for his own mistakes, saying, "It's because of Ethan's poor performance that my job is affected." Additionally, when a female employee asked to leave early because her child was sick, George made her cry by saying, "This is why I have issues with employees who have children. Well, the company will run without you. All right, go home and take care of your child." On the other hand, when a young female new employee seemed unwell, he said, "I'd be sad to send you home because you bring so much brightness, but you're an important staff member. Go home and come back when you're feeling better." She left, looking guilty. From then on, even when coming to work, she seemed to worry about other staff's eye and gradually lost her energy. Day by day, the atmosphere in the office worsened, and eventually, several employees resigned. Yet George insisted it wasn't his fault, saying, "They just didn't have the guts." He bad-mouthed them in front of everyone and refused to change his ways. One day, President John, who was CEO, came to the branch with a man in his 50s named Steve. "This is Steve, who will be joining us from today. George, I'm entrusting you with his training. You know, he's a valuable asset for us," he said. Steve looked a bit chubby, with thinning hair and a slightly stooped posture. He seemed somewhat down on his luck. In front of President John, George was in high spirits, saying, "Leave it to me, President John. I'll turn him into a top-notch salesman in no time." "Good, George. Sales at this branch have been a bit down lately, so I'm counting on you," President John said, leaving George looking tense. After President John left, George's attitude changed drastically. "Hey, Ethan, come here," he yelled, and I rushed to him. "Ethan, you're going to be his trainer." "But just now, President John said you would be the trainer," I responded in surprise. "What, you trying to give me orders? I'm swamped with other work. Besides, how can this old guy be of any use?" George said, kicking a chair over. His yelling and actions frightened some of the female staff, and as I stood there hesitantly, Steve picked up the chair and spoke gently. "Hi, I'm Steve. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm excited to work with you all." Saying that, he greeted everyone cheerfully. "This is something for you. I hope you guys like it," he said, handing out cream puffs from a popular store to everyone, lightening the mood. Steve then sat next to me and said sincerely, "Thank you, Ethan, for taking on the role of training me." "No problem, Steve. Sorry that you had to see the office like this on your first day. Well, frankly, I'm not doing well in sales lately, so that makes George kind of frustrated," I said. "No, I can tell you're doing your best just by looking at your desk. Let's work hard together," Steve replied, looking at the piles of company documents and sales materials on my desk. "Seeing all this shows you're really thinking about your clients. I may not be one to say, but you're a good salesman, Ethan," he said with a kind smile, reigniting the spark of hope in me. I spent the day giving Steve the tour of the office and explaining the work. We had lunch together at a nearby diner. "If you don't mind me asking, why did you decide to change your job now?" I asked. "My previous company went bankrupt, and when I saw this company was hiring, I applied. I wondered a bit if they were even hiring for mid-career positions. I see. Thank you for sharing. I'll do my best to help you get accustomed to the work quickly. It's kind of you, Ethan. I'm glad to have you as my trainer." Steve's words made me happy. Afterward, I taught Steve as much as I could about sales and even how to make phone calls. Balancing my own sales responsibilities with training him wasn't easy. Still, I didn't want Steve to feel uncomfortable, so I spent as much time as possible with him, providing support. A week later, George called Steve and me. "You know what? I've got a great idea." A bad feeling washed over me as he continued. "Ethan and Steve, if you don't raise 100K in sales by this time next year, you're both fired. How about that for a challenge?" I got speechless at this absurd demand. "What? That's unreasonable," I managed to say. George, relentless, added, "After all, Ethan, your performance hasn't improved, right? You must be feeling your limits. And as for Steve, at his age and starting anew, he must be useless. I'm telling you, I'll give you 1 year. I'm generous, don't you think?" "Huh?" he said loudly. I stood there, unable to respond, when Steve surprisingly said, "Understood. 100K, right?" "Steve, what are you saying? Raising 100K in sales is impossible," I said in a panic. "Ethan, we can do it if we work together," Steve said confidently. Hearing our conversation, George laughed loudly and left, saying, "Good luck, I'll be looking forward to it." Other employees then came up to us. "Are you guys okay? If there's anything we can help you guys with, just let us know." We couldn't say anything because we were afraid of George, but we're on your side. I felt tears welling up. "Ethan, it's too early to cry. Let's shed tears of joy this time next year," Steve said, gripping my hand firmly. Inspired by Steve's firm handshake, I felt a switch flip inside me, and from the next day, we both focused on developing new business. I hustled to set up appointments with companies I had identified and pitched relentlessly. While I struggled to secure orders, Steve, surprisingly, was closing contracts one after another. He said this was his first time in sales. How is he securing so many contracts? Curious, I joined Steve on several sales visits. There, I saw him quickly identifying issues and improvement areas, explaining the benefits of our proposals clearly and persuasively, even to initially hesitant clients. He effortlessly won over difficult clients, warming up the atmosphere by the end of the meetings. Amazed, I asked, "I thought you said this was your first time in sales. How do you so easily win over clients?" Let me think. Steve pondered, then replied with a smile, "Well, I just do what you do, think carefully about the client and listen attentively." I believed I had been considering the client's needs and my proposals. But if they said no, I would sometimes push hard, but I wasn't fully listening to the clients or understanding their issues almost all time. In my haste and lack of calm, I realized. Steve reassured me with a pat on the back. "I'm sure you definitely can achieve your goal, Ethan." Encouraged by Steve, I started to revise my approach, using his techniques and thinking objectively from the client's perspective. Miraculously, like a changed person, I began securing contracts rapidly, and my performance improved significantly. Steve and I became top performers within 6 months. A year after the challenge, Steve and I each achieved over 100K in sales. President John commended us in person. Meanwhile, George, who hadn't improved his performance or attitude, was scolded by President John. "I've heard the rumors, but it seems you were the most incompetent. And you, George, I tasked you with training Steve, but you left it all to Ethan. What were you doing?" he added. "You even said they'd be fired if they didn't meet the target to raise 100K in sales. With what authority could you say that? You're the one who's fired." Indeed, George was fired. Later, Steve revealed his true story. Steve originally worked in sales for 30 years before taking early retirement at 50. After retiring, he worked as a consultant in his own business. However, He was approached by President John, an acquaintance and the CEO, who asked for his help in turning around the branch. "It's okay even if it's just for a year. Could you join as a salesperson?" President John pleaded, and Steve agreed. He was also tasked with monitoring the actions of George, whose behavior had become problematic at headquarters. Steve later apologized, saying, "I lied about the company going bankrupt, about being hired mid-career, and about being new to sales. I feel terrible about it. I'm truly sorry." I reassured him, "Please don't worry about it. Thanks to you, my performance improved, and I rediscovered the joy and importance of sales. I'm truly grateful to you." After a year, Steve truly left the workplace and now serves as a consultant for both the headquarters and the branch. He frequently visits the offices, bringing delicious snacks and lending an ear to the employees' concerns, earning their trust and reliance. Since then, I've maintained top sales performance and was even offered a transfer to headquarters, but I chose to stay at the branch with the colleagues who helped me during tough times. Now, I'm in charge of training new employees. I strive to ensure they enjoy their work, never forgetting the basics. Steve and I have become drinking buddies, and though we are joked about being friends with a big age gap, he is my savior and my friend. I'll cherish this bond, committed to advancing in my work.